My husband took care of me with such devotion, until the day the gardener showed me what he was mixing into my food. Everyone said I was a lucky woman, and for a long time I believed it myself. At 63, I had a spacious house with a well-kept front garden, my pride and joy. The rose bushes I had planted with my own hands always bloomed, as if they refused to die before I did. The smell of damp earth and jasmine in the afternoon was my favorite reminder that life, despite everything, could still be kind. And then there was Adalberto, my husband. He cared for me with a tenderness that was almost moving. He always called me my love, held my hand in supermarket aisles, and made my chamomile tea every night like a sacred ritual. He said it was to calm the heart, and over time, that gesture became as natural as brushing my teeth. I couldn't even remember the last time I made my own tea, and back then, I found that beautiful. During the day, I tended the plants, read my old romance novels, and sometimes sewed clothes I no longer needed. At night, Adalberto would place my favorite blue blanket over my legs, turn on a soft lamp, and play an old record. He used to tell anyone who'd listen, "My wife deserves to be treated like a queen." And I believed him. Of course, there were small signs. Things I lost or forgot. One day I went to the bakery and got lost on the way back. Another time, I left the water boiling until the pot burned. I felt more tired than usual, with a sleepiness that never quite went away. But whenever I mentioned something, Adalberto would just smile, caress my face, and say, "It's age, my love, it's normal." I started to believe I was really getting old. Old in a way that scared me. The neighbors always said I was lucky to have a husband like that. While many women my age were abandoned or ignored by their partners, I was pampered. Adalberto insisted on cooking for me on weekends. Sometimes he wouldn't let me go to the supermarket alone, claiming it was too hot or that my memory was a bit off. I even found it sweet, after all, how many men over 60 still worry about every step their wife takes. Until then, I saw no problem in giving in. I let him take the reins of many things because I thought that's what a good marriage required. Trust. But lately, something inside me began to weigh heavy. I would wake up with a bitter taste in my mouth and a thick fog in my eyes. I struggled to remember what I had eaten the night before. Sometimes, I couldn't recall entire conversations. And there was always the tea. That tea, the one I drank every night, religiously, brought by Adalberto's loving hands. He always said it was chamomile, sometimes with a bit of passion flower, to help me relax. But the taste was growing stranger, more bitter. I even mentioned it once. "Love, this tea tastes a little weird." He replied with a smile. "Must be your tongue, getting forgetful, my little old lady." I laughed. I tried to laugh. But that night, when he picked up the empty cup from the nightstand and tucked in my blanket, something about the way he moved struck me as mechanical, almost too rehearsed. I looked into his eyes and, for the first time in years, I didn't see that sweet, familiar sparkle. It lasted only a second, but that second planted itself in me like a seed of doubt. The next morning, I woke up with trembling hands and a strange feeling in my stomach. The day was clear, but everything looked blurry. I rubbed my eyes and tried to remember what I had done the night before. I couldn't. And right there, alone in bed, listening to the sound of the gardener's hose in the backyard, a small question crossed my mind. What if I wasn't so lucky after all? The day went on, but the unease inside me didn't go away. What happened last night, while Adalberto served me that tea, was just a glimpse, a feeling I still couldn't put into words, but that pounded in my mind with every step I took around the house. The following days came with a strange edge, as if I were out of sync with the world around me. Nothing major, nothing shocking, just small slips. I would leave the cupboard door open, forget where I'd put my keys, which was becoming increasingly common. But at the same time, it felt like all of it was happening in a more aggressive way, as if something in my mind were deteriorating without my consent. At first, I thought it was just age. I wasn't young anymore, and maybe I was starting to lose focus. But one day, during lunch, time seemed to stretch in a strange way. I was in the middle of a conversation with Adalberto about the new jazz album he had bought, and suddenly, I realized I couldn't remember a single musician from that band. No matter how hard I tried, the name just wouldn't come. "Are you okay, my old lady?" Adalberto asked, with that concerned look, as always. I tried to smile, to hide the worries starting to build at the back of my mind. Of course, just a bit tired. The heat's been getting to me. But it wasn't just the heat getting to me. There was a shadow creeping into the corners of my mind, a recurring thought I couldn't fully grasp. When I went back to my room after lunch, I felt a slight discomfort in my back, as if I had walked too much or done something physically demanding. Yet I hadn't done anything out of the ordinary. The tiredness was immense. I lay down on the bed, and, before I even realized it, I was asleep. When I woke up, the clock said 4 p.m. I stayed there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together the lost time. It was as if I had blacked out for hours without noticing. Adalberto had gone out, probably to the store, but something inside me was unsettled. I couldn't remember when he had left, or how long I had been lying there, motionless. I got out of bed and walked over to the mirror. The expression on my face was strange, like I was looking at a stranger. I was paler, more tired, with dark circles I didn't remember having before. A knot formed in my stomach. Something was happening. But what? That night, Adalberto brought me tea as usual. I wanted to ask if he had gone to the store, but the idea of speaking felt so distant, like my mind was blocking the conversation. I just wanted him to leave, to stop looking at me with that calm smile, as if nothing were wrong. When he sat beside me on the bed, I noticed something. Something I had never seen before.
He was so calm.
Almost too calm. As if he knew I wasn't well, but somehow, that was part of the plan. The feeling that something more was going on settled deep inside me, something that hadn't been there before. Something dangerous. But when he offered me the tea, I simply took it, just as I always had. I couldn't resist. The taste was different again. More bitter, stronger. But I didn't want to say anything. He didn't want to hear that. I didn't want him to see me questioning the tea, or his devotion. So I drank it, without another word. And as the liquid went down my throat, a strange sensation spread through my body, like I was growing weaker. Not physically, but mentally. As if the tea were draining my ability to think, to react. Once again, I went to bed early that night. But this time, something disturbed me far more than tiredness, or the fear of aging. Something inside me whispered that the truth was hiding beneath my skin, and I wasn't ready to face it. The next morning, when I woke up, a slight tremor ran through my arms. But what bothered me most was a sense of weakness. Not just physical, but mental. It was as if I couldn't remember what I had done the day before. I tried to relive the moments, but everything felt foggy. Adalberto came into the kitchen with his usual smile, as if nothing was out of place. He looked so calm, so composed. "Feeling better, my love?" he asked, placing a cup of tea in front of me. I looked at him, a question at the tip of my tongue, but something held me back. I knew I needed to uncover the truth. But the truth still frightened me. I wanted to believe everything was fine, that I was just tired, that nothing was wrong. But I knew something was happening. Something I could no longer ignore.
The tea.
The blackouts. The strange feeling that time was slipping through my fingers. All of it told me that something was very, very wrong. And in that moment, a decision took shape inside me. I needed to find out what was going on. I needed to understand what he had been making me drink all those nights. And more importantly, I needed to know why he was doing it. But before anything else, I needed proof. Proof that was clear, undeniable. That's when something happened. Something that finally gave me the push I needed to act. I wanted to forget what the gardener had told me. Part of me still refused to believe that Alberto, the man I had shared more than half my life with, could even consider something so cruel. But there was something in Mr. Anselmo's eyes, in the tremor of his voice, that I couldn't ignore. Deep down, I knew. The seed of doubt had already been planted. And from that moment on, I began to see my daily life through different eyes. The next morning, I pretended to be asleep as Alberto got up. I heard his careful steps toward the kitchen, the drawers being opened gently, and the clinking of spoons against porcelain. When he returned with my breakfast tray, I forced a smile, swallowed hard, but didn't touch anything. I said I felt nauseous. He frowned but didn't insist. He just kissed my forehead and left to take care of paperwork at the notary office, as he'd been saying for the past few weeks. I waited to hear the gate close before getting out of bed. I went to the kitchen. Everything looked normal until I saw a little spice jar in the corner of the shelf. It hadn't been there the day before. I have a housewife's memory, the kind that notices when a spoon is facing the wrong way. I picked up the jar. It had no label. The smell was subtle, almost imperceptible, but slightly metallic. My stomach turned, and I had to grip the sink to keep from falling. I spent the day in anguish, trying not to spiral into paranoia, but every gesture Alberto made that night seemed calculated. When he served me dinner, I noticed how carefully he watched as I brought the spoon to my mouth, or pretended to. I smiled, and lied with the ease of someone who, for decades, had hidden pain to protect other people's peace. That night, insomnia was my only companion. I kept thinking about everything we'd lived through. He had been so devoted in the early years, but after my fall after the hip surgery, something changed. I began to depend on him too much. That's when the exaggerated public praise started. Everyone said how lucky I was to have such a devoted husband, one who never left my side, who did everything for me. But now, it all seemed like makeup hiding something much darker. On the third day, I gathered the courage to call Anselmo again. I found him trimming the bougainvilleas by the side of the garden. He looked up, and his face softened when he saw me standing without my cane. "Are you all right, ma'am? I need your help. And I need you to be honest with me." We went to the tool shed, where no one could hear us. There, he pulled a small folded slip of paper from his pocket with a phone number on it. "It's a friend of mine. He worked in a testing lab for many years. I can take a bit of your food to him, and he'll test it. No charge. Just to put your mind at ease, Mrs. Lucia." My hands trembled as I gave him a portion of the dinner Alberto had made the night before. He thought I'd eaten all of it, but I'd hidden some in a small container, pretending to save it for the next day. That same night, Anselmo took the contents with him. In the days that followed, I began observing every detail. Alberto's hands as he stirred the coffee, the time he spent away from home, his constant tiredness, always blaming health plan paperwork. I even began to wonder, was he trying to get rid of me to inherit something? But we were never wealthy. And then I remembered the insurance. An old life insurance policy we'd taken out nearly 20 years ago, which he insisted on keeping up to date. I, being a good wife, had never questioned it. On the morning of the fourth day, I received a message from Anselmo. "There's definitely something there. Not normal. You need to talk to a doctor." My body froze. The message was brief, but it was enough to confirm everything I feared. I felt the ground fall away beneath me. I was being poisoned.
Slowly, discreetly.
And the only person who could be doing it was the man who claimed to love me. I sat on the porch with a blanket over my shoulders, trying to understand how he had gotten to this point. What makes someone want to erase their own wife? I was tired, yes. Sometimes fragile. But I was still alive. I was still someone. And it was there, with my eyes fixed on the garden leaves swaying in the wind, that a new certainty took root in me. I would not die in silence. I would not let the story of my life end like this, with a woman silenced within her own home. If Alberto had handed me a sentence, I would give him a trial. One he would never. The morning after Anselmo's message, I woke up different. There was still pain, still fear, but now they came accompanied by something stronger, clarity. For a long time, I lived under the shadow of dependence. I believed my fragility made me small. But now now I saw that his weakness was the disguise. Alberto needed me to believe that without him, I couldn't function. That lie was what sustained him. And it was that lie I was going to destroy silently. First, I had to act as if nothing had happened. As much as my body begged for distance, as much as my instinct screamed for me to run, I knew he needed to believe his plan was still working. The act was my only weapon. and I became the actress he didn't know existed. I smiled during meals, pretended to eat just enough to keep him satisfied, but hid the rest in small bags I stored inside an old jewelry box at the back of the closet. I disguised the sips of water, kept the conversation light, and always made a point of thanking him for his dedication. The more gentle I appeared, the more at ease he seemed, more confident, and that was all I needed. While he slept, and he slept deeply, thanks to the pills he took religiously every night, I would get up and write. I documented everything, every behavior, every suspicious meal, every ambiguous sentence. And Selmo, with his quiet generosity, helped me hide small jars with food samples and brought me updates from his acquaintance. The homemade tests he ran confirmed there were strange substances in the food. Nothing immediately lethal, but enough to cause discomfort, confusion, debilitation. A slow poisoning. Sophisticated. As if he didn't want to kill me at once, but to turn me into something unrecognizable. It was during this period that I began gathering old life insurance documents. Digging through the desk, I found papers Alberto always said he was taking care of for me, and there it was, his plan printed in the clauses. Sole beneficiary, him. Full coverage in case of death by natural causes. The amount? High enough to pay off our debts and still ensure a comfortable life for many years. I trembled, but I no longer cried. Now everything made sense. I also noticed a new regular visitor, a real estate agent, who came in the late afternoons when he claimed to be helping a cousin with paperwork. A well-dressed man, with a smile far too big. I overheard a muffled conversation between them at the gate. As soon as everything's sorted, I'll let you know. She's pretty weak. That chilled my blood. He was about to sell the house. Our house. The home we had built with sacrifice, where our children had grown up. It was more than betrayal. It was erasure. That's when I decided that protecting myself wasn't enough. He needed to fall. And fall hard. I contacted the niece of my best friend, a young lawyer who now worked with elder abuse cases. I called her in secret. We met at the parish library, where she reviewed everything I had documented. When I showed her the messages, the gate audio recordings, the photographic samples of the substances, she looked at me with wide eyes. Mrs. Lucia, this is very serious. And you've done everything right so far. But we need one final piece of proof. Something that directly ties him to the intent. She suggested a trap. Serious, risky, but something that would erase any doubt. On Sunday, I prepared a special dinner. For the first time, I was the one who cooked. Alberto was surprised, but he let it happen, maybe thinking my mental state was regressing. We laughed, we toasted. He drank wine. And when he was more relaxed than ever, I casually mentioned, I was looking at those old insurance papers. Do you still remember where the original contract is? I think I listed myself as the beneficiary too, right? He hesitated for half a second. Such a subtle gesture, but it confirmed everything. Oh, love, that was changed years ago. You didn't want to deal with the paperwork, remember? I took care of everything for us. I smiled, stood up, and went to the closet. Took out an envelope. Inside was a copy of the original contract. In silence, I slid it toward him. His face went pale. You know, Alberto, I've been remembering a lot lately. And maybe it's time to tell someone, don't you think? He tried to smile, but his eyes revealed panic. And that was the moment I said the line I had rehearsed for days. Ever heard of a string of little coincidences? Sometimes they become evidence. I stood up, went into the other room. The lawyer was there with a recorder. She had heard everything. When I returned to the living room, he had his phone in hand, trying to call someone. But it was too late. The game had turned. Not with screams, not with violent revenge, but with intelligence, with dignity, and with the silent strength that only someone who has survived neglect inside their own home can gather. That night, after the gardener left, I stayed alone in the kitchen, staring at the glass vial with the white powder he had left on the table. My fingers trembled as I held it, as if all the pain I had been feeling for months was condensed into that tiny container. It was a small jar, but the symbolic weight felt immense. I wanted to throw it away, to smash it, to pretend it was all just a misunderstanding. But something inside me said no, that I needed to face it, that it was no longer time to deny what was right in front of my eyes. I hid the vial in an old cookie tin at the back of the pantry. I still didn't know what I would do with it. Report my husband?
Confront him?
Pretend to know nothing to buy time?
My heart was pounding in my chest.
All I knew was that I was alone. For the first time in 38 years of marriage, I realized that if something happened to me, no one would know. My children lived far away, rarely called. The neighbors barely greeted me. I was at the mercy of fate, and of the cruelty of a man I had allowed into the most fragile corners of myself. The next day, I made breakfast as usual. I forced myself to act normal, measuring every word, every glance, every movement. Enrique came down the stairs wearing the blue robe I had sewn for our silver wedding anniversary. He kissed my forehead, asked if I had slept well, and I almost vomited right there. I nearly screamed, nearly threw the coffee pot at the wall. But I smiled. A false, trembling smile. That was what he deserved, my performance, not my soul. As he drank his coffee, I observed his every move. The way he stirred his sweetener, how he offered me a piece of bread, how he casually commented on the news. How could someone be so meticulous, so cold, so strategic? I thought I knew him better than I knew myself, but now I saw a stranger sitting at my table. In the days that followed, I began pretending I was getting worse. I started dragging myself around the house, coughing louder, dropping things, deliberately forgetting names. If he really was poisoning me, I wanted to see how far he would go. I wanted to look into his eyes when he thought his plan was working. Enrique seemed increasingly pleased with my decline. He insisted I eat more of the soups he prepared himself, brought vitamins, said I needed energy. Slowly, he stopped leaving me alone. He said it was out of care, but I saw something else in his eyes. Control. I could no longer go to the garden without him following me. He followed me to the bathroom with silly excuses. And every time I coughed or felt weak, he gave a small smile. That smile gave me chills. That was when I decided to act. I waited for an afternoon when he went to the market and ran to the bedroom. I grabbed my old camera, which still worked, and hid it on a shelf in the kitchen. I adjusted it to record silently, pointed directly at the stove. It took days to time things correctly, to find out when he tampered with the food, when he made his preparations thinking I wasn't watching. The first week, I got nothing. He was too careful. But in the second week, he slipped up. In a rush, maybe thinking I was too debilitated to notice, the white vial fell from his robe sleeve, and he poured the contents into the pot of soup that was meant to be my dinner. I watched the footage hidden in the bedroom, hands trembling. I cried in silence, heavy tears of disgust and despair. He really was trying to kill me. There was no doubt anymore. The next day, I took the hidden vial to the neighborhood pharmacy. I had known the pharmacist for years, a discreet man who always treated me with respect. I told him I had found that powder at home and wanted to know what it was. 3 days later, he called me. Mrs. Helena, this is a rare type of organophosphate. Slowly toxic. In small doses, it can cause symptoms that mimic Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases. But continuous use can lead to organ failure.
I felt a tightness in my chest.
He didn't just want to incapacitate me. He wanted to erase me, slowly, without leaving a trace. He wanted everyone to believe it was natural, that I was aging poorly, that death was an expected consequence. A clean death. No guilt. No investigation. That night, when he came back from work, I set the table as usual. Hot soup, fresh bread, natural juice. All with the same care as always. But this time, I placed the hidden camera in another corner, pointed at him. I wanted more than justice. I wanted the truth. And I would have it. Before he could serve the soup, I sat across from him and said firmly, Enrique, I need you to eat first today. He looked at me, slightly startled, then smiled. That damn gentle smile. Why, darling? Are you suspicious of me now? I just want you to prove you love me as much as you say. 1 spoonful. Just one. For me. He hesitated. For just a second. but it was enough. Enough for me to know he wouldn't do it. I stood slowly, picked up the camera, and placed it on the table. It's all here. And if you don't walk out that door tonight, I swear that by tomorrow morning, everyone will know what you did. Everyone. Our children, the neighbors, the police. I'm no longer the woman you thought you could destroy. Enrique didn't say a word. He just stood there, pale, breathing deeply. He knew he had lost. That night, after Enrique walked out the door without saying a single word, I remained still for a long time. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. It was as if the furniture, the walls, even the lingering smell of coffee knew what was happening. I was trembling, not from fear. It was something deeper. It was as if my body was slowly beginning to accept everything my mind had fought to deny for so long. My husband, the same man who once wrote me a poem on a napkin, had been trying to poison me for weeks, maybe even months. I didn't know for how long death had been lurking around my kitchen, in the silverware, in the supposedly loving hands that helped me out of the armchair. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound at the gate, every step on the sidewalk, made me hold my breath. Would he come back? Now that the mask had fallen, would he choose direct violence? Or would he disappear from the map, cowardly, like he had always been inside? But he didn't come back that night,
Nor the next day.
and for the first time in months, I got out of bed without that persistent nausea, without the dizziness that made me feel like a lost old woman. It was as if, by expelling him from the house, I had also begun to expel the poison he had slowly injected into my body and my soul. I had to act. I couldn't live under the threat of him at a distance. With the video in hand, I went to a police station. I arrived with the dignity of someone who had suffered enough, but would not allow another second of silence. I told them everything. I showed the recordings. The pharmacist gave me an informal report on the contents of the vial and said he would testify, if necessary. The officer, an older man with gray hair, looked at me for a few seconds after I finished speaking. He didn't say, "I'm sorry," nor did he try to minimize what he had heard. He simply wrote everything down calmly and told me I was doing the right thing. That same day, they began the process for a protective order. Enrique had not yet been located, but now he was officially a wanted man. 2 days later, a lawyer showed up at my house, sent by him. He brought a cold and ironic proposal, an amicable separation, a generous financial settlement, and the promise that Enrique would disappear from my life, as long as I forgot that absurd poisoning story. Was that what he thought of me? That after nearly dying, I would still stay silent for money? I looked into the lawyer's eyes and said, with all the strength my tired voice could still gather, "Tell him I don't want his money. I want justice. I want him to feel, day after day, the weight of what he tried to do to me. And if he disappears, I will come after him. For the rest of my life if I have to." Maybe he thought that, at my age, I would settle for peace. But peace would never be possible as long as he was free. The gardener's presence was crucial in the days that followed. His name was Osmar. He used to come twice a week to tend the garden, but started showing up more often, saying he liked to make sure I was okay. I saw a mix of guilt and tenderness in his eyes. He had also felt used. He told me he began to suspect something when Enrique asked him to buy strange substances, using absurd excuses. When Osmar noticed my physical decline and saw the vials hidden in the shed cabinet, his conscience wouldn't let him stay silent. Our friendship grew in fragile soil, nurtured by shared trauma. There was no romance, at least not yet. It was something pure, two wounded human beings trying to rebuild some sense of trust. A month passed. Enrique was still missing. The police discovered he had withdrawn a large sum of money and was using false documents. As for me, I rewrote my will, changed all the locks in the house, and started carrying an emergency button clipped to my bra. The idea that he might return made me sleep with scissors under my pillow. One night, it was raining hard. I was reading in the living room when the lights flickered. A sharp pop, then silence. My heart raced. I grabbed the emergency button and my phone. Slowly, I walked to the window. And there he was, soaked, beard grown, hollow eyes, standing on the other side of the gate. He didn't look threatening. He looked destroyed. But I knew that appearance was a luxury he knew how to manipulate. I opened the window just enough to be heard. "What do you want?" He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I just want to talk. 1 minute. You no longer have a place here, Enrique. I'm not yours anymore. And you'll never again be the man you pretend to be." He lowered his head, then looked up again, eyes filled with tears. "I was in debt. I thought if you died, the insurance—" My soul cracked inside. "You were going to kill me for money?" He didn't answer. Silence was the most brutal answer. I called the police while he was still trying to convince me. When the sirens arrived, he didn't run. He simply surrendered, as if he had finally understood that the end had come. The next morning, the sun rose differently. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. I was now a woman who, at 63, survived an attempted murder by the man who once swore to protect her. A woman who chose to live and to fight. And in that moment, I promised myself that the last word in this story would not be. It's been a year since everything happened, and sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that I'm being watched. The past has this cruel habit of entering the house without asking permission, even when all the doors are locked. Enrique was convicted. He got a short sentence for what he tried to do, 6 years and a few months, with the possibility of a reduction for good behavior. When I got the news, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the porch, looking at the garden Osmar had tended with such care over the past months. I thought about how that man, my husband for decades, didn't have the courage to kill me quickly. He chose daily cowardice instead. The poison hidden in my food, the patience of a silent death. But I survived. And now he lives behind bars. Even if he's released one day, he will never be free again. Osmar still comes by. Love is not yet spoken between us, but something inside me warms every time I see him walk through the gate with his calm smile and worn-out hat. He speaks little, as if he knows my silence is sacred. Some mornings, we have coffee together on the porch. He tells me about the plants, about how certain seeds need shade before they can bloom. I like to think I'm one of those seeds. I started writing. Small chronicles, scattered thoughts on notebook pages. I was invited to join a group of women my age, all with stories worth telling. And there, among those fragile and powerful voices, I found something I thought I had lost: belonging. I'm not just a victim. I'm not just the woman who almost died. I'm also the woman who lived to tell the story. My health has improved. My tests are normal, sleep gradually returned. I started cooking again, but now with a kind of attention I never had before. Every spice, every aroma. I rediscovered the pleasure of eating, knowing that no one but me has control over what goes into my body. The taste of food changed. Or maybe it was me who changed. I stopped using the dishes Enrique liked. I gave some things away. Others I kept, not out of attachment, but because even objects carry scars. One afternoon, I found the letter he wrote me for our 30th wedding anniversary at the back of a drawer. It was faded, the ink failing in places. I read it slowly. He said I was his reason to keep going, that I was the ground he walked on. Cruel irony. I tore the letter into small pieces and threw it into the fireplace. It burned far too quickly for all it cost me. My youngest daughter visited me last month. She lives far away and had barely come by since Enrique entered our lives as a second father. She had always felt he was fake, but I, blind, didn't want to hear it. When I told her everything, she cried in my arms like she did when she was little. And I apologized. Not for having loved, that will never be a mistake, but for not listening to the intuition of someone who always wanted me truly alive. Justice never brings immediate relief. It's slow, bureaucratic, and it doesn't heal invisible wounds. But it gives structure. It gives a name to what many try to hide. And that, in itself, is already a beginning. Sometimes, the greatest act of revenge is not paying back in kind. It's staying alive, staying lucid. It's turning the memory of what they tried to do to you into a beacon for other women who still live in the dark. Last week, I went to the sea for the first time in many years. I wore a light dress, sat on the sand, and closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. I thought about everything I lost, but also about everything I gained. The sound of the waves was like a silent confirmation. I was still here. Maybe love isn't over for me. Maybe there's still room, even if shy, for something new. But I'm in no rush. I've learned that haste almost killed me. Now I live at the pace of a seed, slow, patient, steady. The last time I dreamed of Enrique, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me, hands empty, standing in the doorway. I woke up with a peaceful heart. It wasn't fear anymore. It was just the past reminding me it was left behind, and that the door was finally locked. Today, when I walk among the rose bushes in my garden, I think about how love can be toxic and how it can also heal when it comes without poison. Osmar taught me that with simple gestures, with firm roots, with flowers that need no words, I survived. And now I live.